Do you have some energy left to pay attention to my presentation? Okay, first I want to thank the organization committee to give me the opportunity to share the proposal of a model I believe in, at least from a heuristic perspective. As you see, I'm not an English native, so given the presentation is somewhat dense, I have organized it in two parts, a conceptual part and an empirical part. Yes. Okay.
Sorry for the interruption. My bad.
Him too is the friend of Mary Poppins.
Un moment, il faut faire partir ça, parce que c'est recommandé l'autre qui est parti. On a dit de faire...
So do it.
Okay.
The micro is...
And the mic is... No,
Yeah,
no,
for no
it's
idea.
open.
No, it's okay.
Open. It's open. Sorry, thank you.
It's okay.
So in two parts, a conceptual and why can... yes. And why Noel Nacho is here. Okay. Okay. And also, this is a summer school. So I want also to give you the opportunity to react and ask questions. So I wanted this presentation to be interactive as possible. Okay. First, I will share with you the idea. Thibaut, did you... Ça, normalement, ça ne doit pas y être. Ah, si. Non, oui, ok.
C'est bon?
Yeah. Et ça va rester actif là-haut?
C'est parti, oui.
Ok. Ok. Yes. First, I want to share with you the idea that we all think that emotion, the relationship between emotion and social representation are fundamental but still understudied. I have noticed since yesterday on your presentation a lot of presentation who mention emotion, affect, feeling, and so on. And often we forget to define the notions. This morning, Patrick Rateau has presented, for example, the temporal logic, to how to bridge and to have level of analysis with the different approaches of social representation. I will not exactly follow this temporal logic, and I hope you will understand why in my presentation, okay? I will mention first a statement of Denise Jodelet, who said in her book in 1989, and for social psychology, the consideration of affectivity and its roots in social dynamics is essential if we are to understand the functions involved when the member of your community arrive at the construction of their reality. It is also essential, and I insist in it, if we are to come to an authentic theory of social knowledge. But if we refer to what Markova and Wilkie mentioned when they said, yet it is not at all clear what role, if any, emotions play in this socio-cognitive process whereby social representation form. Perusal for the psychological literature, both on concept formation and on social representation, reveals that emotions are hardly ever mentioned. And later, Denis Zodley and Nikos Kalampalikis, who wrote proposal for future research in the examination of psychological dimensions, still little considered by studies on social representation, otherness, experience, subjectivity, imagination, affectivity, and emotions. So, after I've made this statement, what is the problem? In my opinion, it's because of the main obstacle. This obstacle lies, in my opinion, in the opposition of the main dimensions involved in the process. The first one, a level of subjectivity. We have emotions that are individual modality, disposition, and we have social representation, who are social. And the second dimension, temporality. We have suddenness, brevity, speed of propagation for emotion, and rather long duration of their genesis for social representation. The question is, what theoretical articulation between SS and emotion we can make? We can see 4 types of relationships, referring to a paper of Anthony Pierre Matteo in 2021, who report 41 references. And we can see that there are 2 lines of inquiry, and for each line, 2 directions. The first line is to study the role of emotion in SR processes. In this line, you can study the emergence and dynamics of social representation in the first direction, and in the second direction, studying the component of SR, the emotional component of SR. And in line 2, to examine the role of social representation in emotional processes, with the first direction, the generation and the regulation of emotion, and in direction 2, emotion as SR objects. Okay? But we can sum this line and direction of studies in 2 approaches. You can find that in my papers of 2014 and 2022 in the papers on social representation. We can say that the direction 1 is a constitutive one, and the direction 2 have a constituent approach. But, and I will insist in that idea, that experience of the world is at the heart of both processes, of both approaches. And if we agree with me to say that emotion as products of experience, we can have an enrichment for social representation theory. And then I propose, not only me, but I propose in my research to see emotions at the service of social representation genesis. Okay? So the question now is how, and what is the role of individual experience in the processes of SS genesis. And here I had to refer to Moscovici book of article of 1984. He proposed the hypothesis of imbalance that you know, and the dialectical relation between continuity and discontinuity. And I quote him, "That is, all ideologies, all concepts of the world are meant for solving psychic and emotional tensions due to failure or lack of social integration. Thus, there are imaginary compensations which are aimed at restoring a degree of inner stability." And we have seen in 2020 and in 2024 that one of the main characteristics of the world is its independence and stability. And I'll show you two pictures. One picture is at the Champs-Élysées during the COVID, during confinement. And the other is the Olympic Games last year, okay? And you see two worlds, two reality with two different constraints and who have produced two different kind of emotions. What distinguishes us is a need to assess beings and objects correctly to grasp reality fully, and what distinguishes the environment is its autonomy, its independence of us, or even its indifference to us and to our needs and desires. And my proposal is to ask, is there a signaling system of the failure of social integration? And we require this signaling system. And my theoretical proposal is to present emotion as this signaling system. Okay? I am clear? Yeah. And I quote here Rime, "The only locus in which the virtual universe can be tested is individual experience. It is solely within each individual that mechanisms exist to detect and indicate discrepancies between the anticipated world and the observed world. In this respect, each individual's emotions are relevant to the functioning of the social world. Humanity relies exclusively, I will insist on the term, on the emotions of its members to ensure the preservation of its constructions." So the theoretical hypothesis can be emotions are psychological states expressing the relationship of continuity, discontinuity between individuals' knowledge frameworks and reality. From a sociogenetic perspective, the study of the relationship between SS and emotion allows for an analysis of the tensions between the cognitive system and the social structure. What is this model I propose, which is called the cognitive emotional process integrative model of SS, is to use what you know everyone in the psychosocial triad. I will insist in the way to say in the psychosocial triad, not the social psychological triad. It is in this sense the model that I propose begin from the individual to the social. It can be the reverse, but in my model, it's in this way. And the role of tension, which will be at the heart of the process. And I begin with phase one. To explain that, phase one refers to a situation, an event, or a reality characterized by what for instance, Bauer and Gaskell or Sabine Caillot on the constraint of reality, which is marked by unexpectedness, novelty, and familiarity, strangeness. And I take the example of the SARS-CoV-2, the event, and explain how these events have produced emotional tensions. And I will define emotional tension as a phenomenal experience of a significant ego-object dissonance. That means a flaw or a violation of the expectation system. And we have seen all the global emotional impact of SARS-CoV as a massive disruptive event. You have some papers that I mention here. If you're interested, I will give you references. The second phase, which is called the pre-phase in the model, is very important because I will emphasize that this pre-phase is, for me, fundamental when we want to understand the process. Because when SARS-CoV emerged, some objects of the context were activated. And for example, vaccination. It's what Wagner called hot connection and cold connection, how a context can activate to transform a cold connection to a hot connection. Because it is important because it's a preliminary step to the study of the cognitive emotional process. And it is in this pre-phase where I place the useful approach of structural approach. Because we have here to analyze and assess the product. Okay? Phase 2, called psychological tensions, is referred to the cognitive work after the emotional tensions. And I take the example of two emotions, joy and anger, linked to the discovery and availability of the vaccine. Some have considered that the discovery and the availability, it was too fast, and it was again the, how do you say in English, the precaution principle? We say it like that. And others were happy and because it was discovered fastly. And we can turn back to our normal life. And we have to address psychological tension as the need to cope with the dissonance. And emotion weight, intensity, and polarity will put the ego-object relationship under positive or negative tension, driving cognitive work. That means as a social representation dynamics. And I consider the individual's positioning and adhesion to the assert object as what was called a psychological anchoring process, and especially a semantic anchoring. I will talk about this. It's okay? Am I clear? Yes. Phase 3, the dialogical tension, and I put on the bracket the social sharing of emotion. Why? Because the dialogical tension, for me, it's a drive for the meaning making, and for other colleagues, a psychological anchoring, and ego is now a holder of what Moscovici called a source in the world. That means a contextualized knowledge about an essay object. And ego is now a carrier of an epistemic stake. This epistemic stake motivates the need for otherness in the construction of meaning. The need of otherness creates a dialogical tension arising from an asymmetry of knowledge. So the need for otherness constitutes the main motive for the social sharing of emotion. And you know now, and you see now the commonality between social sharing emotion, social representation in the processes. Phase 4, called psychosocial tension, I will take the social sharing of emotion during the COVID-19 pandemic. You have some papers on that. And we have seen emotional rate tensions related to vaccination, which have produced varied potentials of tension emerging from multiple social contexts, expressing social insertions of individuals. The context of healthcare, of education, culture, economy, sport, family. And I've put some picture here. You see on the upper some people for the vaccination, and under people against vaccination. So vaccination become a complex object endowing with epistemic and identity states. And here I want to insist on what Patrick Rateau and Grégory Le Monaco have said this morning, the complementarity of the different approaches. If we are to study the phenomenological approach of emotion, we can study very experience of reality, creating very tension zone on the object. These tension zones cannot be identified without taking into account the meaning components of the object. And I was agreeing with Mauro on a presentation who said, on what object are you studying? It's very important to know how object you are studying. And for that, the structural approach, for me, it's very useful, as Patrick Rateau and Grégory Le Monaco told this morning. Emotion can also potentially generate positions taking in relation to the object. And there is a link to make with the socio-dynamic approach here. They involve the need for otherness to integrate disruption, and the dialogical approach will be useful here. And finally, emotion can be generated from experience of reality, the ground. They carry the mark of social insertions. And here it is the sociogenetic approach that it is combined. Okay, this is a conceptual part. If you have some reaction or question, I can answer if you want. Because now I'm going to present the empirical study. Yes?
I have just a question. Also talking about emotion.
Yes.
There are some categories of emotion that are usually considered more social emotion, like shame,
okay,
guilt,
okay,
and others that are more related to individual activation.
Yes.
Anger. So I think it can be even. And now you are treating emotions as a
Yes.
as a whole, but
Yes,
could define
but
complex.
you anticipate a bit what.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Because yes, Sarah.
My question is, did I understand well that you put emotions before the content?
Sarà
Ah,
una voce.
did I understand well that you put emotions before the representational content and not connected to the content itself?
No, it's a second way. It's a dynamic.
So,
In the relationship, it's a dynamic. It's how the emotion triggered, how it is linked to a social representation object. So I'm talking about existing social representation object. Because in my model, it's the main aim is to how can emotion be a way for strengthening process or a weakness process for a social representation object. I don't know if I understand, but for me, there isn't a frontier border between emotion and context. They are linked. It's a dynamic. And I would explain with the empirical study how this process, the cognitive emotional process, function. Yes.
Just to, if I understood well, what you're saying is that emotions constitute social knowledge, but there is also a dialectical relationship between the two.
Not really, because maybe I was not enough clear. Emotions are a signalic system, if you want to explain. It's a signalic system. It's why yesterday, maybe it's yesterday, I was talking about detectors of relevance.
Okay. So it's about the existence of a dissonance
Yeah.
between.
Absolutely. It's because it's a signaling system. It's a position of Rimet, for example. But the most important thing that it's signaling system came from an individual. There is collective emotion, but my model is to show how subjectivity, individual subjectivity, can influence social subjectivity. Yes?
And do you perceive
We don't have the micro for the audio.
emotions as
Vabbè.
Thank you.
Do you see these emotions as a static thing as well? Because within their subjectivity, there is further subjectivity. Because, different cultures, for example, can see joy, anger in a very different way. So it's also within itself, it's very subjective. So do you see them still as static emotional definitions? Because you said positive and negative emotions as well. But how do you even categorize what's positive, what's negative? Or it depends on the content and then the emotions categorized?
Yeah.
Or it's taken as a default and then the
Okay.
content?
Thank you for your question. I will refer to the Scherer works, who present what he called modal classes of emotion. He has 4 classes. Achievement emotion, composed with joy, pride, pleasantness. Antagonistic emotion, fear, hate, disgust. And you have also the third classes of emotion, I forget it. It's resignation emotion, sadness, for instance. And the fourth, I forget it. He called it approaches emotions. It's not really achievement emotion, but they are positive, but like, for example, interest. For him, it's an emotion interest, because he moved. In emotion, you have the semantic reference to motion, to move, make people move. I don't know if I understand I answer your question. So yeah, in a cultural perspective, honestly I can answer you because I'm working on Occidental European culture and their relation to emotion. So I will talk about joy and anger in a European way, in Occidental way.
So I understood well, in the literature you engage with every emotion as a role, as a function.
Yeah.
And coming back to social integration.
Yeah.
Which kind of emotions are functional to social integration and which kind of emotions are functional to, for example, social disruption, if there is this very strict association?
Yeah. I would say that antagonistic emotion, in the way Cher defined them, are disruptive. For instance, anger means that you have goals and you have some obstacles to your goals. Because this obstacle came from external standard, for example. Someone who made something that finally you can reach your goal. And you feel very anger, and it's disruptive because you can reach your goal.
Isn't this connected in a way with progress?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and to
what I'm trying to understand is which part of these are evaluative when
yeah.
it comes to.
Yeah.
No, maybe we should continue with the presentation.
Yeah. Maybe with the empirical study you will see it. Yeah.
Okay, only
And for integration, excuse me, Gaia, for integration, because it was the other part of your question. For example, joy and pride, it's a kind of emotion that means integration, because for me, they will reinforce the knowledge frameworks.
Okay, then there is the relationship with social representation.
Then there is the relationship with social representations.
Yeah.
So emotions have a role.
Yeah.
And also social representations have a role in all
Yeah.
this, of course.
Yeah. But in another presentation, I show the functional homology between social representation and emotion, but there is a great functional homology. But I don't have enough time to present. Yes, Gaia?
I wait for.
Okay. Okay. Okay, I will continue now. Okay. So take as a social representation object teamwork. Because for me, in my opinion, teamwork is really an unstable, tensional, and controversial object. In what way? Because teamwork is situated at the crossroads of individual and collective processes, right? It is ubiquitous object of social practices marked by societal issues. It has specific characteristics constituent an essay object. referring to Boumediene. It carries stakes, social, economic. It is an object of direct and indirect communication that are characteristic of groups. It has various social dynamics, and it is not linked to an orthodox control system of meaning-making. And I want to link teamwork and gender. Why? Why this object study with gender can be useful? Because here we can have different social dynamics, and especially with gender stereotype in the workplace context. It seems that women are more in favor of collaborative, we talked about that with Gaia just before, and harmonic setting, while men are more likely to adopt competitive behaviors. So gender identity was selected as the variable social membership here with this object. But we can take all the others as a social variable, if you want. Maybe culture, maybe teamwork in different culture, for example. So the first step is to identify the status of the SR component of teamwork, and I will make references, refer to the structural approach and especially the central nucleus theory. I have, in a previous research, identified SI component of teamwork using what Grégory Lemnov presented this morning, hierarchical evocation. We call it characterization questionnaire, okay? And I found 18 items characterizing the social representation of teamwork. The participants are 130 French university students from management program, half female, half male. And in the preface, the questionnaire, question 1, had 3 sections. The test of context independence that we have seen this morning. The valence, so the positive or negative valence of SR component of teamwork, and demographic variables, age and gender. I present how I use a test of context independence with the social representation object here with the 11 item characterizing the social representation of teamwork, and the question was, for you, is teamwork always, in all cases, an activity that, for example, requires information sharing? Definitely not, rather yes, and definitely yes, okay? And for the valence assessment, the same thing, the same 18 items. And the question was, please assess each aspect of teamwork by indicating whether you believe it is more positive, negative, or neither. The pre-phase analysis, we compute the assertion rates from TCE1, and we submitted them to the DMAX. You have seen the DMAX this morning. Huh? And I made an analysis of gender positioning on the valence of SR component regarding their structural status, central versus peripheral. And you have the result there. Maybe I have to zoom on it. Okay, let's have some time to interpret the result. You have the central system, which is called the communal dimension, and we found in this communal dimension information sharing, common decisions, mutual assistance, efficiency, and common goals. Central system is consensual. If you see the balance at the right side between male and female, there is no significant difference between them. Okay, it's very consensual. But for the peripheral system, we have some differences. The differences is for this, what I call the social technical dimension. We can find work planning, skill management, virtual recognition, and so on. Male rates more positively than female this dimension. And the third dimension, what I call the centralized dimension, we can find conflict management, depending on each other, hierarchy, exacting power, and sharing same idea and opinion. We have here also a difference, and female rate more negatively, significantly more negatively, this dimension than male. Okay? This is the SR component of social representation of teamwork in the population, in the participant. Okay? It's very important to identify the content and the structure, because we see after how this identification is useful to analyze the process. Though I've said that central system, a positively valued consensus dimension, the communal dimension of teamwork, and the peripheral system, a dissension, a more positively perceived dimension among males, so the socio-technical dimension, a more negatively perceived dimension among females, the central dimension. I have enough time? How?
15 minutes.
15 minutes, okay. Okay. Phase 1 and 2 of the model, emotional and psychological tension, related to a specific constraint of reality on the SR of teamwork causing emotional tension and unexpectedness. It takes place 2 weeks after the pre-phase. It consists of a business simulation selected to create teamwork experiences and to produce emotional events. Teams of 7 to 9 participants manage companies for 3 days in a competitive environment and separate rooms. The business simulation consisted of 10 periods of group decision-making processes. For each period, the cycle of the teamwork processes were the same: analysis of the situation of the company, decision-making, and result reporting. Several unexpected events, fortuitously or induced by organizer, were likely to produce dissonance with team member expectation regarding strategy and goal. Okay? It's clear for everyone? Yeah. The materials, the questionnaire 2 with 3 sections. The first section of questionnaire 2 contains the GAC, the Geneva Appraisal Question. I don't know if some of you know this questionnaire. It's a questionnaire very useful to report the evaluation of the emotion. Came from Share, 22. Assessing the nature of the emotional tension experience. The second section of Q2 aimed to examine the impact of emotional tensions, the dynamic of the assay object, the psychological tension, from a second administration of the TCI. It's a TCI2. Okay? And the third section with demographic variables. This is the Geneva Appraisal Questionnaire, and I put on green the item in the questionnaire, 9 items of the GAG, specifically related to anticipation and expectations. Okay? Given the high internal consistency reliability in this study, Kronbach 19, A dissonance with expectation score was computed by calculating the mean of the responses to the 9 items. You see how I work, I use the questionnaire of Shearer, especially on his expectation and expectation dimension. To study emotional tension as a signal of dissonance with expectation, a two dissonant nature of emotional tension, positive versus negative, and two gender analysis of variance were designed with the two variables as between subject factor and dissonance with expectation score calculated from the 9 item of the GAC. Okay? This is a TCU2, it's the same that the TCU1, but you see the question is a little bit different. Having experiences the emotional event we reported, to what extent is teamwork always in all cases an activity at the same questionnaire, the same items, okay? So I made a differential TC score from the 4-point Likert scale of TC1 and TC2, calculate regarding the structural status of a component of teamwork. And this way I estimate the internal dynamics of the assay object, that is, the individual positioning, okay? The closer the differential TC score was to 0, the lower the dynamics of the assay component. We can call it a stabilizing effect. And this responds to your question just before. The closer the differential TC was to +3, the strengthened the assay component, we can call it the strengthening effect. And the closer the differential TC score was to -3, the weakened the assay component, a weakening effect. Okay? So the ANOVA is to analyze the impact of the dissonant nature of emotional tension on the assay dynamics of the teamwork. The same thing, dissonant nature, positive versus negative, and gender analysis. And the two variables as between subject factor and the mean differential TC score as dependent variables. Okay? It's okay for you? Yes? No? Yes. The results. First of all, the results on the dissonance, the expectation dissonance score. What we can see here is that female participants and male participants rate emotional tension in the same way. That is, they relate positive emotional tension to positive dissonance with expectation and negative emotional tension to negative dissonance with expectations. Okay? And the results on the dynamics, as you can see in the figure, maybe I read the text. The simple effects of emotional tension within female and male participants show gender differences in the dynamic of central components at the left side of the picture. Okay? You see it? For female participants, positive emotional tension was related to dynamic stabilizing central component, while negative emotional tension resulted in dynamic weakening them. But for male participants, there was no difference in the dynamic of central component regarding the nature of emotional tension. For peripheral components, the dynamic of peripheral components did not operate in the same way for female and male participants. For female participants, positive emotional tension, on the right side of the picture, of the figure. For female participants, positive emotional tension was related to assay dynamic weakening peripheral component of the assay of teamwork, while negative emotional tension resulted in assay dynamic strengthening them. For female participants, there was no differences in the dynamic of peripheral component. Still here. So, what can we say in conclusion of phase 1 and 2? First, perceived variations of a teamwork experience, positively or negatively dissonant with expectation, were related to the dissonant nature of emotional tension. For female participants, it's what, for me, the most important result. Negative emotional tension led to a process of semantic anchoring, resulting, on the one hand, in a weakening effect of central component, conveying the communal vision of teamwork, more likely to be associated with the female stereotype. And on the other hand, in a strengthening effect of peripheral component related to the social, technical, and centralized dimensions of teamwork. These last components, social, technical, and centralized, reflect, in my opinion, a genetic attribute more defining characteristic for the male stereotype in the workplace context. For female participants, compared to male participants, the experience of negative emotion related to a teamwork situation led to a representation dynamic, calling into question the consensual vision of teamwork, thus constituting a critique of the social order. Through a dynamic of teamwork triggered by negative emotion, power relation and social position related to gender as expressed, which are governed by strong social normativity. This is why teamwork can be, in my opinion, considered, according to the social genetic approach, a tensional object. And the relationship between emotion and social representation permits that. Okay? Five minutes. I can stop here. I plan to present you the phase 3 of the model. I can do it, or I can stop here now, because here maybe I just present the aim of the research, how an essay object is put into dialogue during an emotional social sharing situation. And for me, to test the hypothesis of a differential dialogical effect as a function of the valence of emotional experience, the structural status of the element constituting the essay object, and the speaker's social positioning. As you want.
I don't know. Yes, it's like 5 before 6.
Okay, I try to go fastly and just to show you all the process. Okay. Donc, that's things that you know, that the social emotion, a cognitive phenomenon in which an emotion is reactivated and expressed through social research toward a recipient, and the collective process of knowledge actualization and elaboration, the definition of Rimet. And for me, that is exactly, for me, a potential situation of dialogicality of essays. The method. The analysis of a situation of social sharing of emotion, I create 4 focus groups mixed by gender and emotion. Group A, female experiencing joy. Group B, female experiencing experience of anger, of experience of teamwork, anger. Group C, male joy, and Group D, male anger. The focus groups guide. First question, please describe the emotional experience of teamwork reported in phase 1. And question 2, what would you like to share about this experience? I made a deductive thematic analysis as referring to Castro Muro and Monet Walker. I take as variable the lexical volume, the total number of words produced, the emotional weight of the lexicon, the total number of emotional terms produced, the lexical referential weight by structural status, that is a ratio of words associated with central and peripheral component to the total of lexical volume, and a pragmatic analysis, that is a comparison of essay elements used in the discourses according to their structural sex status, and the lexical referential weight according to the recalled emotional experience of teamwork and gender affiliation. The results of the deductive, I've not insisted enough in this type of analysis, because you have seen how I take the identification of the social representation of teamwork with the social status, and I use that for the deductive thematic analysis, okay? So what we've seen in the table is joy. The lexical volume is more referring to central component. Okay, you see that in the table? While anger, the lexical volume is more associated with peripheral component. Let's go well with the results found by the social representation theory. The pragmatic analysis for joy. This is a table result. I don't know if you know this kind of analysis. And here the most important thing is the standardized residual. I forget to translate this table in English, but you understand it? You have a femme for female and homme for male, and you have the three dimensions at the left side of the table, the communal dimension called in French dimension collaborative, the socio-technical dimension, the centralized dimensions, okay? So the result, discourse that consensually refers more to the central component compared to the peripheral component, okay? For joy, huh? And for female and male, I begin with female. The female discourse is more frequently referred to the mutual assistance. Remember the 5 elements of the central system. It's why even in this case, we are often to tell that the central system is monolithic, it's consensual. It's not really consensual, because you see here female refer to mutual assistance. It's just one element of the central system. For example, for the verbatim example 1, when I said that one person was in charge of summarizing the document, it's a work team, it's a teamwork. Huh? I mean that I sent my part, the guy sent his part, and there was mutual support at that level. Maybe I pass more fastly là-dessus. And for male discourse more frequently refer to efficiency. For example, and so at that point, I was quite happy because we had done the work. We had finished the work in half the requested time actually. And so when we move onto the debate, well, our arguments, well, all good, they were all quite clear, and so what was good was that since everyone had done their work well, everyone knew their part, there was no need for the other to intervene to, so to speak, help them in the debate, and so it was pretty fluid, and it allowed us all to succeed in our work and get a pretty good grade. Well, I passed this one. And for anger, we have a socio-regulated discourse that refer more to the peripheral component compared to the central one. For female discourse were constructed in the affirmative form and primarily in reference to conflict and power. For example, and on top of that, they even turn on us a bit when we try to make them understand. Some in the group say that, especially this person in the group, was problematic. You should know that at the beginning. Okay, okay, it's a joke between you. Okay, I was actually the one who took the leadership. I took it all the time. It's just that later on I was more authoritarian than, let's say, compassionate. And for male discourse were constructed in the negative form, more in reference to the socio-technical dimension, more frequently associated with mutual recognition. For example, in the group's involvement, they didn't necessarily want to come with us as soon as, for example, the teacher said, here are the two girls, and you are going to constitute a group. We immediately saw the faces the girl made. I want to conclude now. The dialogical process about the social representation is not neutral, especially when the object is tied to emotion. Discourses are actively constructed from different positioning of social agents, thus highlighting zone of tension about the object. Emotional experience involving an S-object, for me, I would like to link it with the notion of Denis Jodelet, the notion of horizon that Nikos have mentioned yesterday. The same object, or even taken from different horizons, gives rise to exchanges of interpretation, confrontation of position through which individuals express an identity and a sense of belonging. So we must consider the social sharing of emotion as the expression of the social, both in its social affective and social cognitive functions. But just insist on some ideas, and I close the presentation here. The process is upstream and downstream of the product, and that only by taking into account the contents can the process be systematically studied. I quote Jodelet and Nikos Kalampanidis here. To be considered in the context of the whole psychosocial triad, as knowledge construction is a socio-connective process and a cultural product of social subjects. And SS for me must be seen as dynamic object of social change. I'd like to close my presentation with this conclusion that I have made in the paper. In a world where change has become a constant, by giving emotion and their sharing the means of embracing it, a community summons up its past, defines its present, and prepares its future. Seems that I was a little bit too long, sorry, and now I'm... They are tied.
Right, would be interesting to see these at a different scale. No?
Yeah.
For teamwork, or for example,
I don't know why, but I was thinking about war.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was saying in the beginning of my presentation that you've seen the temporal. Yeah. You've seen that I not follow exactly the temporal logic that Patrick have presented this morning. It's a way to link and to bridge different approaches, and with the social representative object as teamwork. It's an example of how can we bridge individual subjectivity, social subjectivity, and different approaches.
Only one thing from a sociological point of view, I had the impression that if I see our plan of a big conference of sociologists, there are no research network dedicated to emotion, but many new research streams. The proposals that are not stable, but limited to the period of the conference. And the impression I had is that the idea for us, sociologists, is that you are trying to give to the emotion the dignity of a way of knowledge. And this is my impression in the first part. And
Can I just adjust the degree of signaling the relevance of knowledge?
Perfect. And the idea that we made it, we can transfer. So it's the idea of a signal, a system of signal emotions, and a system and giving of knowledge. This is the impression.
Yes, 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 of course, absolutely.
General comment.
Yeah.
Actually, I have to say I didn't know your work, so it's for me really, really interesting. I need to read it more carefully. I think that this could be also very relevant for, as I said before, we are also working on large language model and this kind of statistical analysis of text, where emotion, especially when you look at how do they call it? Say, very quick analysis, let's say, of the emotional tone.
Okay.
Also, you are always detected, but as something is there, it's not there, it's connected with this, it's connected with that.
Yeah.
So I think with this dynamic vision can also
Yes.
add something, and it's possible to use, I imagine, I have to read it more, looking at the dynamic, for example, in online communication. No?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
there you
yeah,
can have
yeah.
different phases of communication, different
Yeah.
contexts, and also different emotions.
Mm.
This could be also relevant
Yeah.
to analyze the evolution of online communication.
Yeah. Yeah.
Comments or
Yes.
Politics.
I just want to add that I forget to mention it, that I insist on emphasizing the disruptive dimension of emotion, but here we are studying more emotional episode because its duration is a little bit longer than real emotion. Emotion as sudden, brief, intense. The difference that Schreier made between emotion and emotional episode. Emotional episode is a phenomenological experience of emotion.
But isn't it derived from past emotions in a way?
Not in this way. It is when you have experienced an emotion, whenever it is, the cognitive work and the feeling just after the emotion, it's what Schreier called emotional episode. So when we ask participants to record emotion, it's exclusively emotional episodes. Okay?
One question. The list of categories.
The list of
The list
categories of
the answers in the second part. The way to define anger and healthy.
on phase two. On phase two.
You're kidding us.
The categories, you proposed the categories.
When you were
Or
talking
they
about
emerged from the.
No, you have to. You remember the questionnaire, the GAC. Remember the Geneva Appraisal Questionnaire?
After.
Okay.
No, così no, aspetta.
No, here we are. Here we are.
Ecco, okay.
This one?
This one,
Yeah.
the components.
The component of self teamwork. Yeah.
Okay. It's emerged from the list of information common mutual, the name.
Yeah. The items. The items. The component of the representation. Yeah.
Okay.
The 18 items.
The 89.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yet emerge from the previous
Yeah.
analysis. What makes a group, a teamwork?
Okay. Okay.
Hierarchical evocation.
understand.
Interview, first interview, hierarchical evocation, and question of characterization
But this
have
list-
identified the 18 items.
Era già chiuso all'inizio, non mi ricordo questo.
No, parte dalle associazioni libere, poi trova questa lista viene confermata e
Ok,
quindi
le
questi sono gli
associazioni
elementi.
libere, di chi le legge? I ricercatori?
Non
Sì.
c'eri stamattina.
No, c'era un
Noi non volevamo
da letto nuovo, senza notare, perché
Gaia,
non è stupido, cioè,
We discuss that at the restaurant, Gaia, if you want. Take time.
the list of the components
Yeah.
was created in interpreting the interview or not?
Not only the interview, because after that we have what Gregory have presented this morning, the standardized questionnaire, the Q-sort questionnaire. This list was made first with a hierarchical evocation, which helped me to produce and to create the Q-sort questionnaire,
Okay.
and the subjects have to fill it. And these are the results of the, okay?
Can I ask something? When you are at the results, the last part on what woman question and what man question on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
is it connected to gender stereotypes in teamwork? So women questioning man powership and and the man questioning, because it was very fast how you reported,
Yes.
but it was less on the components than on the role of gender stereotypes in teamwork.
Yeah, it came from the focus group, and I precised before that the focus group was guiding by two questions. Please describe your emotional experience of teamwork reporting phase, and what would you like to share? And we have thematic analysis. First, thematic analysis guided by the identification of the social representation of teamwork. We have 3 judges who have to code the different items of the essay, and the result is the result of the coding of the 3 judges. Okay? It's okay?
Yes, my question was that the coding of the judges
Yeah.
was according to the boxes previously
Yeah,
mentioned.
absolutely.
But what if you change perspective and you are watching gender positions inside the teamwork?
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
You understand what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah. But it's the way I choose to show how emotion influence. It's a constitutive approach. I've mentioned the other approach. It's constituent approach. I am in a perspective from the constitutive approach in the relationship between emotion and social representation, because I believe that emotion, the function of emotion is more in the construction of culture, as Remy mentioned, than as a constituent, It's other studies. Okay.
Methodological individualism perspective in many ways.
It's not an individual, it's a psychosocial perspective. We go from the individual when he experiences emotion and how this experience can, with the social sharing of emotion, create a dynamic on social representation of an object.
Logical relationship.
Yeah.
Starts from maybe.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you so much. You have energy to stay here at this time. I will pay a drink for everyone.
Okay, it's recording. Thank you, Boumediene. And just before, important information.
Talking about food,
Yes.
important.
So the dinner party will start at 7:30. It's very